Hello everyone, and welcome to Crossover Mind. Today, we're diving into a fascinating paradox in the world of technology and geopolitics, highlighted recently by AI pioneer Andrew Ng. The idea that U.S. national security regulations on AI chips might actually be accelerating China's technological innovation. I'm your host, Steve, and I'll be looking at this from a geopolitical and economic strategy perspective.
And I'm Lisa. I'll be bringing the technology and industry analysis viewpoint to our conversation. It's great to be here, Steve. This is a topic with so many layers.
It really is. To set the stage, the U.S. administration, citing national security concerns, has placed significant restrictions on the export of advanced AI chips, like those made by NVIDIA, to China. The core idea was to slow down China's progress in AI, particularly in areas that could have military applications. But recent moves, like China barring its own major tech companies from buying NVIDIA chips, suggest something else is happening entirely. From a strategic viewpoint, this looks like a classic case of unintended consequences.
Exactly. And from a technology perspective, China's move isn't just a political statement. It's a signal of growing confidence in its domestic alternatives. For years, the entire AI world has been built on NVIDIA's hardware and its CUDA software ecosystem. Breaking away from that is incredibly difficult. But what we're seeing is that the US restrictions created a powerful incentive for China to pour massive resources into becoming self-sufficient. And it's starting to pay off.
So they were essentially forced to learn to swim on their own, and it seems they're getting pretty good at it. What does this payoff look like on the ground, Lisa?
The most prominent example is Huawei and their Ascend series of AI chips. Individually, a single Ascend 910 chip is significantly less powerful than, say, an NVIDIA H100. If you compare them one-to-one, NVIDIA wins easily. But that's not the game Huawei is playing. They are focusing on a system-level design approach. Think of it less like building one giant, powerful engine and more like orchestrating a huge swarm of smaller, coordinated engines to work together efficiently.
That's a great analogy. So it's about the collective power, not the individual unit strength.
Precisely. For instance, a new AI model was trained on a cluster of 1,000 Huawei Ascend chips. And Huawei is designing systems like their Cloud Matrix, which links hundreds of their chips together to compete with NVIDIA systems that use fewer but more powerful chips. They are optimizing everything: the chips, the high-speed connections between them, and the software, like their MindSpore framework. They're building a complete, homegrown ecosystem from the ground up.
This pattern is something we've seen before in history. When a country faces external restrictions, it often triggers a surge in domestic innovation out of necessity. Look at China's space program. After being excluded from the International Space Station, they built their own. The same happened with military technology. Sanctions intended to contain a nation's progress can, over the long term, make them more resilient and independent.
And it creates a whole new competitive landscape. For a long time, the question for Chinese tech companies was, which NVIDIA chip should we buy? Now, the pressure is forcing them to ask, how can we build a world-class AI system without NVIDIA? That shift in mindset is a powerful driver of innovation. It might not be as performant today, but it's a foundation they fully control.
Which brings us to the other side of this paradox, the U.S. position. While China is aggressively building its self-sufficiency, the U.S. remains heavily dependent on a single point of failure, Taiwan, and specifically the manufacturer TSMC. They produce the vast majority of the world's most advanced chips for NVIDIA, Apple, AMD, everyone.
And we've seen efforts to change that, right? With new fabrication plants or fabs being built in places like Arizona?
Yes, but building a state-of-the-art fab is incredibly complex. As Andrew Ng pointed out, even with TSMC building a facility in Arizona, there are huge hurdles with workforce training, supply chains, and simply matching the efficiency of their Taiwanese operations. It's a long road ahead. So we have this diverging situation. China is becoming less vulnerable to supply chain disruptions from Taiwan, while the US remains highly vulnerable.
From an industry perspective, that vulnerability is terrifying.
A disruption in Taiwan, whether from a natural disaster like an earthquake or a geopolitical event, would bring the global tech industry to a grinding halt. If China, in that scenario, has a functioning, independent semiconductor industry, even if it's a generation or two behind the cutting edge, their global influence would skyrocket overnight. They would become a key supplier in a world starved for chips.
And that's the strategic nightmare. The policy designed to maintain a technological lead could inadvertently create a scenario where the US loses its access to critical technology while its main competitor secures its own. It fundamentally changes the balance of power.
It really does, and it forces companies everywhere to rethink their strategies. Relying on a single supplier or a single country for critical components is no longer a viable long-term plan. This whole situation is the biggest advertisement for supply chain diversification that I've ever seen. We might see more investment in chip manufacturing in Europe, India, and other nations as a result.
So, as we wrap up, it seems we're at a critical juncture. The US policy was born from legitimate national security concerns, but it has set in motion a chain of events that could lead to a more fragmented, but also potentially more resilient global tech landscape. The strategic question is whether the US can build its own supply chain resilience faster than China builds its technological independence.
And from the technology side, the question is what this new era of competition will bring. While it creates short-term challenges, competition is often a catalyst for innovation. Will China's system-level approach inspire new architectures for AI? Will we see a world with multiple viable AI hardware ecosystems instead of just one dominant player? That could be a very interesting future. It's a high-stakes race, and the outcome is far from certain.
A perfect summary. It's a complex issue with no easy answers, forcing us to think about the delicate balance between security, competition, and global collaboration. Thank you for joining us again on Crossover Mind. At Crossover Mind, we provide the latest information on technology, business, and society, and delve into important themes beyond them. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Until next time, look forward to it. Goodbye.